All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight we are going to be transitioning from the social aspect of the 20s, and right now we're going to be talking about more of the economic vibe of the 1920s and how that will ultimately lead us to the Great Depression. So, our lesson tonight, titled "The Business of America is Business," and our learning target for this lesson: I can explain how technology and a greatly expanded economy led to the Great Depression. So I can explain how technology and a greatly expanded economy led to the Great Depression. And what we're going to look at when I talk about an expanded economy, we're going to look at things such as the stock market. And then also, we're going to be looking at the idea of credit. So while our economy, while I say it's expanding, we're going to find out whether or not it is really expanding or if we just think that it is expanding. So the 20s and its standard of living. The standard of living in the 20s is phenomenal. Remember, we are riding a post-World War I high where our economy was booming during World War I. And we have taken that with us into the 20s. So we think that life is great. And while we have a lot of things that we see, a lot of advancements as far as standard of living, by far the biggest standard of living during this time period is the automobile. Companies such as General Motors and Ford are all booming and booming and booming. And so the car is by far the biggest advancement that we see that improves the standard of living in the 20s. Now, the car is also a social change, and the reason that it's kind of a social change, and we didn't talk a lot about it, it's not really that important, but the reason that it's an important social change is because it kind of separates the family. And like we talked about, separating the family goes very much against traditional social America. America is supposed to be family-based, and with the car, we're seeing that families are starting to drift apart. Parents and children are starting to really kind of separate, and so that is a huge social change as well. But as far as the economy goes, the car was also the biggest advancement that we see during the 1920s. In addition, we have a huge increase in other forms of technology and something known as convenience items. And what is a convenience item? Well, it's an item that you want, but you don't really need. Now, when I list some of these, you're probably going to say to yourself, no, we need those. We don't want them. Things like a washer and dryer, dishwasher, and refrigerator. So all things that are very commonplace in all of, or most of our households today, but all things that nobody had up until this point. You know, your prime example, the washer and dryer, look at that. They just had a clothesline, and they would use the clothesline. Dishwasher, you just did it the old school way, and you just cleaned your dishes with soap and water. And now all these items are now made available to us because of a boom in electricity. So now the question becomes, you have all these fantastic convenience items that are making our lives better, making our lives easier. How do we pay for it? Okay, how do we pay? And that is the big question. And this is a question that down the line will ultimately kill us and will be one of the primary reasons why we had the Great Depression. And the way that we pay for these things is with credit. Now, do we have credit cards per se? No, we don't. We don't have credit cards, but what we do have is something called installment buying, or an installment plan. And an installment plan is basically the idea of buy now and pay later. And this is really, really important. Buy now, pay later. You can go, you can take the item with you, you can just pay for it whenever you get the money. Now, this is great. This is a huge plus because it allows us to own all these convenience items, and it makes our lives a lot easier. But what's the problem here? What's the big problem with credit? Well, the big problem with credit, and you can ask any new college student this who just gets a credit card, is that eventually it becomes very, very difficult to pay the bills. And we'll get more into that tomorrow, but the bottom line is that we are buying, and we cannot continue to pay for all of these things at once. And so what's going to happen is we're eventually going to get into trouble because we are buying things with money that we do not have. Another example of buying things with money that we do not have is stocks. Now, the stock market is a very, very crazy thing, and one that if you asked me to go into the stock market today, I would not do very, very well in. And here's why, and here's how we get into trouble in the 1920s with stocks. A lot of people think that they are a lot richer than they really are. Again, I'm going to say that because it's super, super important. We think we are a lot richer than we really, really are. So we buy stocks on something called speculation. And speculation is trying to get a quick fix. It's the idea that we are going to buy and sell quickly, and we are going to make quick profit by eventually buying stocks for one price, waiting till they go up a little bit more, and then sell them. So it's quick profit. We're not worried. We're going to take risks. And why? Because we have the money, or we think we have the money. Again, the key, we think we have the money. And so what people would do is they would buy with speculation for a quick profit. But in the longer term, they would do something else called buying on margin. Okay? And buying on margin is the idea of credit, basically. So let's say I'm investing in stock of Apple. So if I'm investing in Apple, and let's say Apple is $45 for a stock. So what I would do if I was buying on margin is instead of that 45, I would only put down, let's say, $10. And the other 35 I would get from the bank. Now, why would I do this? Well, I would buy on margin because my hope is that this Apple stock keeps going higher and higher and higher and higher. Because the higher and higher it goes, the more money that I can make. And I can eventually, let's say when it gets this high, I can just pay this back. And the rest is all profit. Now, again, the problem is that this $45 Apple stock, eventually, it's going to go down. And what we're going to see is that people start realizing that there's no real money in the stock market. It is just kind of a whirlwind of money. So you have money here, and then you keep going, and you keep going, and you keep going, and you had this huge giant tornado of money, but you really only have this much money in there. The rest is all just made up stocks and loans from banks. So people don't have the money that they think they have. And so all of these stocks and all this buying on margin, all this, quote, prosperity is all kind of just a magic trick. And it's monopoly money, and we're playing with money that we do not have. But for right now, we're okay with that because, as President Hoover says, the business of America is business. And President Hoover is a conservative president who was elected in 1928. And his famous quote, his famous motto is the business of America is business. And what does that mean? It's basically the idea of capitalism at its finest. Okay, remember, we want to get things back to the way it was before these progressive presidents came in, like Teddy Roosevelt and like Woodrow Wilson. Let America kind of do its thing and let business run America. When our economy is good, America will be good. And when is our economy good? Our economy is good, remember, going back to the old school way of thinking, when the government is out. And so Hoover and the other presidents of the 1920s get the government out of the economy. And this is going to come back to bite us in the butt. And we'll see why more tomorrow and also Friday. But the last key concept here, and I'm going to erase this, you guys have the idea of the government staying out. Okay, remember, we are going old school with the economy and the government staying out. Now, it's important to know that with the economy, like we just said, we're going old school. But what are we doing socially? We're going new ideas, such as women's rights, such as the Great Migration. So while we are challenging traditional ideas socially, economically, we're going back to the way things used to be. So, quick review. Can we explain how things like technology, new convenience items, and credit eventually get us to the Great Depression? If we can do that, we will be good to go. There was a ton of information here. If you guys are a little bit confused, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We will go over it in depth tomorrow and Friday. I want to make sure we get this because it is important. And it's not that difficult, but I think it's just a lot of information thrown your way. So, that's all I got for you guys. Sorry for the length. I do apologize. We will discuss Thursday and Friday. Other than that, have a great rest of your night, and I will see you all on Thursday.